Welcome back to the Relentless Growth Podcast. I'm Jack Maher here with my good friend Chase Calhoun. I'm in Spring Hill, Tennessee. Chase is in Little Rock, Arkansas. And we're coming at you with a pretty great episode today. I think we're going to talk about occupancy, what's happening across the country, and kind of what we're doing about it. And so before we really dive deep into that, we'll start out this episode like we do everyone. Chase, give us a little update just to check in on where you're at, what's going on in your world.
Yeah, absolutely. So again, I'm out of Little Rock or Central Arkansas, and so for us, it's been kind of keeping busy. We've got a build to rent project that we're working on, or had been trying to work on for a really long time now, and we're going to be building some single family homes with attached ADUs, and we've got a lot of roadblocks, hurdles, and pushback for kind of everybody. It looks like we finally have gotten our first set of building permits approved, and we were required to get a grading permit that has been approved. So we've got equipment back on site there and pushing forward. And then on another build to rent project that we've got coming up in a different city, we've got our application for rezoning submitted and a planning commission meeting on the books for early next month, which would be exciting. How about you?
Yeah, we got a lot of moving parts right now. We got turned down on a project at the city commission the other day, and so we've already resubmitted that one with a little revised density, and hopefully we'll be able to get that through. And then we've gotten a positive vote in another municipality, and we're in like a delay period while they do some research on ownership of roads and stuff before we can get our second positive vote there. So we've got those are both single family neighborhoods. And to back up a little bit, we're John Mayer Builders. We build in Spring Hill, Tennessee. We build multifamily and single family. And so those are two single family developments that we're working on and excited about. But they've both been a couple of years in the process. And so we're hopefully getting to the end. But we're seeing some positive movement, but definitely anxious to be able to get started on those. So that's kind of our biggest news and our biggest win in our world right now. And then to kind of dive in just to our topic, just what's the state of the market in Little Rock? What are you seeing? And then we can kind of go from there on what we're doing to kind of change that.
Yeah, absolutely. So as far as what we're seeing on like vacancy and lease ups and stuff on the rental side, it's just a tough market right now. And it's probably the slowest that I have personally seen it. And the conversations I've had the opportunity to have some conversations with some guys that manage properties, not just in Central Arkansas, but also like in Tennessee, specifically Memphis, which is a different market from you, but a big rental market there. And one of the conversations I had with a guy he's ran a property management company for 14 years now in both of those markets. And he said it is the slowest, that he has ever seen it. And so it's just interesting. It's not just us. And I've talked to people in other parts of the country that are kind of seeing the same thing. I think there's a lot, that's playing into it. I think the economy is a little bit slower than people may realize. I think a lot of people are, with inflation and everything, people are stressed a little bit more on their personal finances. And again, even if they're not unemployed, they maybe get hours cut or not have as much overtime opportunities and stuff like that. It's been interesting to see because it's been top of mind for me. So I've been digging into it quite a bit. Obviously, whenever our occupancy starts to dip, it makes me a little bit nervous. And so one thing that I found, like in our market, I don't know what you're seeing, but when I look at the vacant units that are available, it's a lot more than what I normally see. And so for whatever reason, we don't have people moving out of our market. And so it doesn't seem like we don't have any job losses. And in fact, it's the opposite. We have more employers coming into the area and creating more jobs and people moving here. But the amount of available units seems to be a lot higher than what I'm used to seeing. How about you?
No, we're seeing something very similar. Yeah. Again, we've got positive growth across the board, but things are definitely sitting. Concessions are going up, 1 month, 2 months free, pretty common. And we're seeing where occasionally we'll get market studies where they look at our local market and, say they give a rating to like what full occupancy is. And so probably this time last year, 92% was about where most people were. Our goal is always 95%. And so we just got a market study yesterday or the day before, and it was, I think, 89.5%. So, that's only 3.5% down from last year, but I think the feeling is a little more substantial than that. You can feel the slowness a little bit, and it's always hard in these cases. I feel like the tendency is always to overanalyze it, and that's definitely what we're going to do today. But the rental markets, it's just funny. Like, tomorrow we could both fill every vacant unit we have. And sometimes sometimes it's it's just a sharp little dip and it comes back out. And sometimes it's more sustained and you never know. And so you've got to treat every one like it's going to last. And so, trying to get creative to get things done, but we're seeing very much the same thing you are. We're not seeing, we've got some new supply coming online. Obviously we're bringing new supply online, but not a ton of new supply. And so it's interesting. The area is still growing. So it's almost like, where are the people going? Because they theoretically, the units should be absorbed. And so I think maybe there's some interesting things that we're not catching on to yet. And I definitely think what you said is an important concept, that I think the economy is slower than the national economy or the news would give it credit for. And so obviously rates dropped yesterday or the day before. That's a positive step. I don't think it's going to move the needle in the short term. I think it's probably going to take a couple more rate drops to do that. Yeah. But what are you doing on your properties to kind of buck the trend? Because you're seeing it there. I'm seeing it in Tennessee. I've talked to other guys who are seeing it across the country, really. And so, like, market specific to you, what do you think you can do to help move the needle?
Yeah, so there's a lot to this. It's like kind of complicated. It's just not so simple. It's like, and it's funny because there's been times where it's like so easy for us to rent units. It's like literally all you got to do is like list it online, and you're getting multiple applications, and you're just picking the best one and screening it. So there's a bunch of stuff that we've been trying and pushing on. And the biggest thing that I kind of have circled back to the whole time, though, is it's like we know that we have really high quality units. So it's like that's something that I think would be like an early place to look on if you're, say, an early first time investor, or if you buy older properties or whatever. Like that'd be first and foremost. Like what's the quality of your units? You guys are putting brand new construction, super nice Class A multifamily in line. Like that's not a concern of yours, right? Like they're high quality. One thing for us specifically with some of our older units is it's like going back, and like they're high quality as far as like they were remodeled really nicely and higher end. But like if we've got units that are sitting or even just on the turnovers, let's like double, triple check that they're really showing well and presenting well. Like are the yards looking really nice? Do we need to do any simple, like on the small multifamilies we have, do we need to refresh the flower beds and just make them present a little bit better? And just some real simple like maintenance. Maybe it doesn't need it, but it helps. Like one thing we did on one of our apartment buildings is it's not old. It was totally repainted 5 years ago, but like I noticed some of the doors and stuff were looking pretty beat up and worn. So it's like, just put a fresh coat of paint on the front doors just to make it show a little bit better. So for us, it's like we want to focus on making sure the units present well. Stuff like price, obviously, is a big deal. Like I realize that the rents for us have been pretty stagnant, I would say, over the last year. We're also pushing really hard on retaining tenants. Like we don't want to lose good tenants. So we've kind of foregone price increases on the units we have, I would say, at least over the last year. But then we need to be aggressive. If units are sitting and they were priced well as of a year ago, maybe we need to make some price adjustments. So if it warrants, we're making more price adjustments now, I would say, or quicker now than we ever have in the past. But then aside from that, like something I brought up to my team is like, there's renters out there. There may not be as many people that are like actively out there looking, but there's a ton of renters where we're at. And so we need to have really nice units. They need to be reasonably priced, and then we need to just do a really good job. And even if that means, and I hate to be like this, but if we got to steal tenants from other landlords,
Sure.
That's what we're that's what we're going to do right now. And so it's like, how can we use our marketing to get out there that we have really nice units and pull good tenants into our units if we have to do that. So we're pushing a lot right now on marketing. And then the last big piece of it that I would say that we've really been focused on, and I think it's moving the needle a lot for us, is just being way better about follow up. Because again, in the past, all we had to do is list them, and it's like we're going to fill the units. Like that's not cutting it right now. So if we're getting an inquiry on a unit, we need to be following up with a person and moving them to that next step. And if we have a showing, we need to be following up with that person and moving them to the next step. Or if we have an application, we need to be following up with that person right away and moving them into one of the units as fast as possible. Because if we're not doing it, somebody else is going to do a better job at it, and they're going to steal that tenant from us. And so it's a lot more competitive. And so we need to be better at our job right now. Those have been the biggest things for us. How about you?
Yeah, honestly, very similar, very, very similar. So because we're in a pretty strong new construction market, we always have to play the concessions game because if we're not doing it and somebody else is, that's an easy win if somebody can do it for free. So I think first and foremost, we're just trying to stay on top of what the local market is doing to get people in the door and making sure that we're consistent and we're matching it. Just making sure we're not getting passed by. Because if you're a month and 3 other complexes are at 2 months, you could be doing everything else right and better even, but you're going to lose that game. And so, especially right now, when I know you feel it like we do, people are a lot more price sensitive. In 22, they'd pay $100 more for the nicer unit, and they'd be happy to do it. Now, I think that what's going on in the economy is real, and people are they're saying, well, that one's 200 feet square bigger or 200 square feet bigger, but it's $150 more a month. We don't really need that space. Whereas that was an easy decision a couple of years ago. And so, to kind of sum up what you said, I feel like it's a little bit of back to the fundamentals. Making sure you're doing everything right. We're doing very similar things, making sure landscaping's up, making sure breezeways are clean. We do valet trash in our apartments, it's a necessity based on the size of the complex. But in all honesty, they don't do a great job of it. So we're trying to figure out a different system. Maybe we bring that in-house. Maybe we get a different sub in there to where we can just provide a better quality of service. And, that's a pretty granular thing, but it's a big deal. If trash gets missed or if they don't do a good job or they're not clean, it's all the little things that really affect tenants' perception. And, that could be an excuse for them not to renew. And so we're looking at renewals the same way you are. How do we keep the people that we've got? And how can we take a holistic look at the property from the outside in and make sure we're up to par? Because, one of the things that we think about a lot is, again, we have nice units. We're very proud of our units, but you've got to walk there. And what do you see on that walk? If you see unkept landscaping, if you see stains on concrete, if you see dog poop on the ground, you're not thinking about how nice the unit is. The prospective tenant is thinking about, man, I just saw 3 red flags here. And then, the unit's nice, but their perception's already made up. And so to get people into that unit to appreciate what you have, you've got to make sure you're doing everything else right. So that's what we're concentrating on. Another thing that we've done is play with leasing compensation for our leasing agents, to where whether it's certain units or whether it's across the board, giving them a little more incentive to get more aggressive with follow through with all those things, because like you said, the people who follow up, the people who get those calls in, are the people who are going to get the tenants. Because if somebody's going to rent, they're going to rent, and chances are they're going to make a quick decision. It's usually not a super drawn out process, and so you've got to be on the ball to get that stuff done. So just a little extra motivation on that end, I think goes a long way.
It's awesome. So we're doing a little bit of the concessions, which honestly, like we've done very little of in the past. We're only doing, and maybe we need to be more aggressive with this because it'll help. But we're also a little bit different product than what you guys are doing. But we're doing like half off the first month's rent right now,
Yeah.
and we've played with some other stuff in the past. So like one thing we've done in the past is low or reduced security deposits. My concern with that is sometimes like what we experience is that doesn't necessarily always draw the best tenants. And so it's like we would rather have this refundable security deposit and then reduce the move-in cost. But the reason we're doing the half month's rent, I think the reason a lot of the bigger apartment complexes like your guys' and others are doing the reduced, 1, 2, 3, I've even heard as much 4 months free, is it keeps the move-in costs and the living costs very low on the front end. Another kind of silly one that I heard, and it came up in one of our meetings, and we tested it a little bit. I don't think anybody took us up on it, but especially like workforce housing, is it was like, hey, you could either have half off your first month's rent or a free like 65-inch flat screen TV. When I look at it as the owner, the cost, it's actually cheaper for me to go out and buy. Like
Yep.
TVs are very reasonable now. Like that's a cheaper concession for me. But like some people were like, I guess the experience that this person had was that some people get super excited about that and not as much about the rent concession. What other concessions have you guys, or incentives for the tenants specifically, have you guys, I guess, tested or heard of maybe? And then what one specifically are you doing right now? Is it just the 2 months free on the move-in?
Yeah, specifically, we're doing 1 and 2 months free right now.
Okay.
But yeah, we've heard of the same thing. Giveaways. I think sometimes something physical has more of a
Yeah.
tangible impact than a dollar amount or things like that. Some people get really creative with this. You might give away services or extra things as well. We're fairly standard, fairly traditional on this. One thing that may be getting off in the weeds a little bit, but if you're ever looking at selling a multifamily property, generally those one-time concessions are better than like an overall concession
Yeah.
because it's considered like a one-time marketing expense versus an ongoing expense. And so from the value of the property, those also make a lot of sense. The only other thing that we're doing is we're taking a look at what units have been sitting the longest, and then we're going to discount those units probably to a greater degree than maybe we should. But that lets you advertise a lower rental rate. That gets more people in the door, and maybe they rent that unit. Maybe they want to rent a different unit. But having a couple units out there, especially ones that you need to fill, and maybe they're in undesirable locations. Not undesirable. It's just not that, maybe it's a third floor walk up and it doesn't have the best view. And so if there's a way to justify it, having a lower rent rate for those, and then you can advertise that, you can get more people in the door, and a certain amount of people are going to want that unit. A certain amount of people are going to want to pay a little more for a nicer unit. But if you can't get them in the door, you can't capture them. And so I think that's something that we're doing as well.
That's awesome. Another thing that we have not been the best about in the past that we're actually starting it this month. It should be going out hopefully today, this week, but we're going to start doing a monthly newsletter, not just for our tenants, our current tenants. We've been able to scrape like our inquiry list, so people that have submitted actual like cards to go do in-person showings, but also just anybody that's actually inquired about one of our properties. And so we're going to start doing like an email on a regular cadence. And so the whole point of the email is going to be to provide, some type of value to not just the tenants, but again, people who are renters. So maybe not one of our renters, but they were renters in the past, or they inquired about one of our properties in the past. And then just doing that on a regular cadence to and it'll be stuff like, here's stuff to watch out for when looking for a new unit, like, be careful of rental scams. And we're going to spotlight a local church. We're going to spotlight a local restaurant, and then we're going to maybe a health or a fitness tip. And then, but at the end of the day, like here's our vacant units. If you're moving at any time in the future, we'd love to have you as a tenant. And so something like that, that's more of the marketing thing, but just spending some more time on marketing. And again, like our list of inquiries is substantial. It's like 20 or 30 times the size of our actual tenants. And like we talked about, those are tenants. They're not our tenants necessarily right now, but we'd like them to be at some point in the future. And so even if they're not ready to move today, or even if they're on a lease for another 6 months, if we can get them into kind of like a marketing funnel, when the time comes up and either something happens with their current place where they submit a maintenance request and it doesn't get dealt with, or somebody was rude to them, or when that something happens, we want to make sure that we're top of mind. And at least we may not have a unit that fits what they're looking for, but at least they think of us first when they're thinking about moving next time. So that's something that's a brand new thing that we're going to start doing literally this week, and we'll do that on a monthly cadence.
I think that makes a ton of sense. One thing that I just had a conversation about 2 days ago, actually, and I don't know, we haven't seen a ton of it that I know of, but I've got a real good friend who manages a lot of property in Manhattan, actually. And they've seen a dramatic increase in fraudulent applications.
Yeah.
And I think it's more common in environments where it's more difficult to evict. So, if somebody gets in an apartment in New York City and they never pay, they might be able to live there for a year, so there's a pretty high incentive for them to do this. I think there's a lower incentive probably in Arkansas and Tennessee, where we've got a little more landowner friendly laws there. But I think it's definitely something to look out for. And we had an interesting discussion about it in that there's a recent like switch and change, even on social media, where it's like popular to tell how people are doing this. They'll tell, hey, here's how I did X, Y, and Z, and I stayed here rent free. And like, it's been an interesting shift from like a couple of years ago, where if you did that, you wouldn't want to tell anybody. And now it's become like prevalent to teach people how to do. And so I think generally things travel California, New York, and towards the interior of the country. And so if we're not seeing it in our markets yet, I would expect us to see a lot more of it in the months and years to come. So I think that's an interesting thing for people to keep an eye on. And again, the friend I have in Manhattan, they're highly sophisticated. They've got systems in place, that verify information. But for us smaller guys or people that have just a few properties, it can be a really dramatic effect. If you've got 10 properties and you get one renter in there that's not paying, it's a big deal. And so we can probably come up with some services to recommend, but it's something that you need to make sure you're keeping top of mind, because sometimes when situations are too good to be true, or if there's a little red flag in the back of your head that's saying, man, something about this story doesn't really make sense, take it seriously, because that stuff is becoming more and more and more prevalent right now.
I will say that is unfortunately something that we have personally had to deal with, and like it's definitely out there. And I would say it's something that you need to be extra cautious of right now. Like when we have units that we're like pushing real hard to lease up, and we really want to get to a higher occupancy, there's a real you have to be really careful of a tendency to like start to relax a little bit on some of your requirements just to get somebody moved into the units. And we do try, like I would say we're probably more likely to work with somebody if they've got bad credit or something that's on their credit. We will do stuff sometimes, like still do that half off first month's rent, but maybe a little bit of an increased security deposit to work with somebody when we can. But I personally, we have gotten stricter with our screening criteria, especially when it comes to employment verification right now, because you got people who they need somewhere to live, and they would rather scam companies like ours than go out and actually get a job and do things the way that they're supposed to. And unfortunately, we'll probably dig into this maybe on our next episode, but with our society, I think it's like they not only they think it's okay, but they literally don't see anything wrong with it. And we've had some bad examples of that. The worst one we had is we had a guy who very well basically faked being an executive with like Microsoft. And I mean, he had verifiable pay stubs with just the taxes being withheld and everything looked legitimate, and a phone number to call and verify employment. It was pretty well done to the point where he probably could have just gotten a really good job if he wasn't so focused on ripping people off. And even afterwards, when it became very clear that he wasn't who he said he was, from what he submitted, it would have been really tough to catch it unless you have some like good software that can do that. Now we have software that will actually go in, and if somebody's got a job like that, the software is able to verify that. But it's hard to even trust like employment verification, because it's easy for people to like give a phone number to somebody and they know when you call to say X, Y, and Z. And so it's an interesting situation, something definitely to be aware of. It can be very expensive. Like in that case, that was a hard person because they were that type of person that are okay with doing that kind of stuff. They were a very difficult person to evict. And the eviction laws are very favorable where we're at. And they were still hard to get out of that unit in the time limit.
Yep. Yeah. I think it's just going to get more and more prevalent, and we'll have to get more and more sophisticated on our end in order to fight it. And I think you'll probably see more and more systems integrated into property management software and a lot of things that are dedicated to fighting this. And, with AI and things like that, I think there's a good amount of things we'll be able to do to combat it. But the people on the other side will be using the same systems against us, and so there's a lot of information out there. And so we've just got to do the best we can. But especially, if you've got 400 units and you get a couple fraudulent ones, it's the cost of doing business. If you've got 20 units and you get 3 fraudulent ones, that's a real bad time, a real bad year. And it could, not be good for you. So just something to be very careful about if you're doing all your background, you're doing all your checking yourself. Not to say that we haven't been there and we've all been there, but it's a dangerous place to be in this day and age because you've got to be able to verify the people that you're putting in your units.
It's also worth noting, again, we're talking about lease ups and filling vacant units, but again, a big thing that I think is very related to this is the tenant retention. And what I've found is when we've come across these type of people that either lied or we've had problems. That was the worst one we've had, but we've also had people with the job offer letters, I think make fraudulent job offer letters. If you get a bad tenant, especially into a multifamily building, who causes problems for other tenants, the likelihood, and this just happened to us where we lost because of a bad tenant in a complex, we lost a good tenant because they weren't going to be there dealing with that kind of stuff. And so it's something that when you come across it or you have problems with bad tenants, like in my opinion, especially, all the time we've been good about this, but especially right now, it's like that needs to be dealt with quickly and swiftly so that the good tenants that are living there aren't lost from kind of one bad apple. And so it's definitely, I would say, a little bit related to this as well.
No, I think that's 100% right. Well, we're coming up on about what our time is. If you had to give, just to take away a soundbite, something that stuck out to you from the episode today, Chase, what would that be?
For me, it's just, maybe it's because top of mind to me, but it's being over the top or extra good, especially right now with the follow up and the follow through. So you can have the nicest properties in the world. They can be priced right. Your marketing can be on point where you're getting plenty of inquiries and leads. But if your team isn't doing an excellent job right now with follow up and follow through on the inquiries, it's very competitive right now, and you're going to lose those potential tenants to other owners or other landlords. How about you?
No, I think that's a great point. Yeah, I would go with just concentrate on the fundamentals. I think when it gets tough to lease, sometimes people are quick to, not that giving away TVs, it's a legitimate marketing effort, but sometimes they're quick to try the out of the box and the different flashy things, and they may be effective, but if your property's not in the shape it should be, if there's, if you've got dog poop everywhere, and that's a real multifamily issue, believe it or not, we fight it all the time. But those little things will matter. And so I think just work from the inside out. Make sure that you're getting all that stuff worked out. And then if you need to get creative, if you need to do something different or do a guerrilla marketing effort, I think there's a time and a place for that. But to really capture the traffic that you're going to get from an effort like that, you need to make sure your property's in the right shape. And so, yeah, follow through fundamentals. I think we're kind of playing from the same playbook. But I think this is a great episode, and it's a very relatable problem for those of you out there that own property or are looking to get into it right now. Because it's a tough market, it's a good time to get into it from a buy standpoint, And so
100%.
that would be the other encouragement is this is where people get sick of managing a property and they sell it for less than they should. And so from an opportunistic standpoint, we're being not doom and gloom, but we're talking about the downsides of what we're experiencing. But there's an upside to somebody who's trying to get into it. So if it's the worst it's been in 15 years, somebody who's had a house for a long time, they've always had it rented, it's been vacant for 3 months. Now is when they may consider selling and just say, hey, I want to get out of it. And so consider that from an opportunistic standpoint, that everything we're saying is happening across the country. And there are people that are just saying, hey, I'm going to get out of this. And so don't take it as a bad thing. Take it as a good thing. And it's an opportunistic time to buy.
Yeah, love that.
All right, guys. Thank you for listening. We'll see you guys next week.
Have a good one.